We offer insurance valuation and Freezer card calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
What makes Randery Jewelers the optimum place for your memorable gift? Is it our range of exclusive, high-end, luxurious jewellery? Or is it our master craftsmanship of all your bespoke jewellery needs? We believe it's because at Randery Jewelers, we know just how to make your special moments last forever. Whether it's for a wedding, anniversary, or just a simple gift to show your love, trust Randery Jewelers to make it special. www.randeryjewelers.com. Make your moments last forever with Randery Jewelers, the family name you can trust.
Ishmael, weren't you supposed to be in Umrah?
No, man. With this new visa issues, I can't go every year.
Yeah, I know.
And now my wife, she on my case. She wants the Madina Kajur, Zamzam, Kawa, Dukkha. You know, all the Suhur and Iftar stuff. I'm telling her, forget all that this year.
What are you stressing about? Find everything at IG Hussein. Leave Ramadan shopping. You can also do all your Eid shopping one time. They got a wide range of Saudi and Dubai Islamic wear for the whole family. Eid gifting cannot get any easier. They have a wide range of perfumes, musalas, frames, and kiddies' educational toys, and much more.
What? Are you serious? Ramadan and Eid shopping under one roof?
Yeah, man. Now you can tell the wife no more excuses for not having homemade savories.
Oh, what savories? More time for her ibadat, not for making savories. IG Hussein, Overport branch, open every Sunday and public holiday. IG Hussein, your Islamic lifestyle.
Give charity without delay, for it stands in the way of calamities. For child-headed households in Bloemendal in the Eastern Cape, the daily diet consists of white bread and a carton of cheap juice or sugar water, known locally as the poppy water diet. Make a difference to that one child or family. The Al-Fida Foundation has over the past 13 years worked on the ground and gathered the largest database in the Eastern Cape region of Muslim zakah recipients. Phone our offices at 041 484 1288 or visit our website at www.alfida.co.za. The Al-Fida Foundation, your social investment partner in the Eastern Cape.
Looking to get your kick? Kiki's have now reopened on 235 Matthews Maiwa Road in Durban. Head on over for the Taste with Kick. We offer something scrumptious for everyone in the family. Wraps, chicken tikka, burgers, tender grills, mocktails, milkshakes, and so much more. Corporate and events catering available. Visit our social media pages for more info or call 031 209 0119. Kiki's, the Taste with Kick.
Connect and stay ahead with Salam Media. This is Salam Media, coming to you live from South Africa.
Rights Day weekend, yes, International Human Rights 10th December. However, South Africa celebrates human rights on the 21st of March, and this is also to coincide with the events that occurred, the tragic events that occurred in Sharpeville, in Langa, and other townships around South Africa in the 60s, whereby people were peacefully protesting and were shot while fleeing, and they were protesting of the discriminatory law, apartheid law of the past law, whereby black citizens were then required to carry passes around them as they moved from one area to the next. And I'm joined in conversation by accomplished and experienced human rights lawyer Ahmed Motala, as well as a human rights activist and defender of our rights, Sister Nabeelah. So welcome back and thank you for joining me. Nabeelah, can you just add to the conversation and respond in terms of community action as well, what Ahmed was saying before the break?
Yeah, definitely. So, I think even just taking into consideration what Human Rights Day means, in various of the other protests that we see in the history of South Africa, such as June 16th, what these events show us is the power of unity amongst the community and what can actually happen if we mobilize and come together. However, I think looking into current day South Africa, it's very important for us to remember the context that we come from. And that is the fact that we come from an inherently violent past. And we are seeing these small trickle effects that we are now seeing in our communities and the rising GBV and femicide rates. So when it comes to addressing these issues within the communities, I strongly believe our communities aren't equipped enough to deal with these issues simply because our government has failed in properly addressing and providing resolutions to what happened in the past. And I know there are a lot of individuals who are of the opinion that we shouldn't still be talking about apartheid. We are now 27 years into a democracy. However, we are still living with the effects of apartheid, and we see it in all of our communities, we see it in our institutions, where it's become a lot more systemized and institutionalized. So for me, it has to deal with a collaboration between our government and our communities. If we're looking at our government legislatures, our institutions, our Bill of Rights, all of these things, we need to ask critical questions of whether they actually speak to the context of our people. A lot of the times, the laws that we are seeing passed actually don't really relate to the lived realities on the ground, which is why we end up seeing a lot of failures when it comes to implementing these policies. For example, when we look at GBV, we have issues with our police system and our justice system, which is not being addressed. You have victims of rape going into police stations and end up getting raped at the police station. Now we have to beg the question, what are our government doing to actually ensure that these rights of women, of children are being upheld? And how are we holding these individuals, these perpetuators of inequality, of violence, how are we holding them to account? So to me, it needs to be sort of a holistic system that we need to actually look at reframing and going back to the drawing board on the policies that we put in place. And we need to also really look at our education system because it's also perpetuating a cycle of inequality and injustice. So to me, if we are to move forward, then we definitely have to look at actually restructuring and critically engaging with our laws and structures and institutions and those who run them.
Thank you for that, Nabeelah. Now I'd like to go on to another concept, and I think this is where citizens, ordinary citizens, can really assist in terms of highlighting human rights violations and abuses. I'd like, and Ahmed, you would have experience in this human rights solidarity, because for me, that's a very, very powerful concept and tool is human rights solidarity. Somebody grew up in the 70s and 80s. You can be a testament to this, that especially international solidarity, what was going on in South Africa and rest of the world. You say in your work, you work in the atrocities in Sri Lanka, permeated in Sri Lanka as well as Libya, and I'm sure other areas of the world. But this powerful tool we have is human solidarity and human rights solidarity in creating a sustained awareness and also as an instrument of change. How can we cultivate this solidarity? Because many people are very lax that we have a constitutional democracy. We have this Bill of Rights, so it's enshrined and it's guaranteed. But it's not guaranteed, as we've highlighted all the loopholes within the system. So can you expand a little bit on this concept of human rights solidarity?
I think human rights solidarity is based on generosity, a sense of being selfless rather than selfish. And I think if we look throughout the world, not just in South Africa, there's a huge amount of solidarity amongst human beings. I was just watching a BBC documentary on Syria and the bombing of schools, hundreds of schools in Syria. And in those very difficult circumstances, in places like Idlib, you have medical doctors who have traveled from the UK, from the US, who are trying to treat, children who have been victims of this senseless bombings, sometimes whose legs are amputated, and trying to treat them in very difficult circumstances. Why would a medical doctor who's living in relative opulence in the US or the UK give up their comforts and fly all the way to Syria, to a war zone where they could even die, in order to provide support? Because this is the human nature of trying to alleviate the suffering of a fellow human being. we have to assist our neighbors who may be hungry. And those neighbors doesn't necessarily mean somebody who's next door to you, but somebody who could be, hundreds of kilometers away. So I think this notion of human solidarity is absolutely crucial. And as you point out, Mariam, we benefited in South Africa from that. When you had sanctions against the apartheid government, where people refused to purchase South African products, you had sporting boycotts. So part of the way we could show human solidarity, and I think a lot of people do in South Africa, is through our charitable, kind of work that we do in terms of those of us who are better off and more fortunate to assist those who are less fortunate. Having said that, the other is in terms of responsibilities that some sectors may have. One example would be, private schools that have a lot of facilities, and yet, right next door there may be a school that has no facilities. How can a private school assist a nearby school that may not have proper facilities to ensure that they uplift those children in those schools as well? Education is the key out of poverty. And if we uplift the educational, kind of well-being of people, you don't need more than that. There's a Chinese adage, that if you teach a person to fish, they will fish for the rest of their life. So we need to teach people to fish, not just give them charity. And I think for me, that is the key.
And Nabeelah, in your experience being an activist, so how do we cultivate this culture of human rights solidarity, both nationally in South Africa and then also let it go globally? Because essentially we've become a global village, and while we need to call out human rights atrocities wherever they're happening, whichever place, and we have a powerful platform now with social media, because in countries where there's a total ban, because not everybody enjoys civil liberties as we do in South Africa, and Ahmed will be testament to this, but then we can be the voice for those. We can highlight those atrocities and call them to book to say, you know what, you're not living in a bubble anymore. The world knows what's happening in every country. So we need to be the voice, and with social media and electronic technology, it's become so much easier to elevate and amplify that voice. So how do we then get everybody to be in solidarity with those that are experiencing violations of the human rights?
I think, it starts with awareness and education. So a lot of the times what you see is a lot of people actually don't really know what's happening across the world. They're not really fully clued up. So for us, for example, if you look at the youth clubs, for us, a key component is ensuring that our activists are engaged with the international news, national news as well, and as well they are critically engaging with it and critically thinking about it and navigating those spaces, so they understand what are the human rights violations and how can we act to actually ensure that those violations are not happening. Together with social media, it can be a good thing and a bad thing depending on how you use it. But I think as young activists, we have seen so many social movements that have started on social media, such as the Black Lives Matter, such as #MeToo. These are movements that started solely on social media, and the reach and the solidarity that we saw garner from these movements was actually really, really impressive. And so to me, it's movements like that, it's situations like that we should actually be looking at how do they do this. And it was actually through sharing real life human stories. I think, over the past few years, what we've seen is that a lot of the times our stories are being told by other people, and that's a problem. I think, social media has given us that platform and that means an opportunity to actually share our stories for ourselves. And that is power in itself. So using social media can actually be a really great tool to ensure that we garner that international solidarity. Another actually means of doing that is working with a lot of the human rights foundations that we have in South Africa. A lot of them are based internationally, so volunteering with them, following their pages, learning through them, because a lot of them provide learning kits on what is happening across the globe, what are human rights violations. So actually tapping into those networks and making sure that you are engaged, not just within your peers, but across all networks, can actually help us in ensuring that we are actually up to par with what's going on and how we can actually act to ensure that the violations do not continue.
Thank you for that, Nabeelah. We've just got a few minutes left. I'd like to ask Ahmed for your concluding remarks in terms of the way forward in ensuring that everybody enjoys the protection under the Bill of Rights, and the human rights are so we preserve human rights and dignity of all citizens. And let's just take this discussion, I think, even globally, because you in a position where you see everyday atrocities happening. And I mean, some countries, they are more, they don't even have constitutions as us that enshrine human rights, because they live in dictatorial governments. They've been oppressed. You see places like Rohingya, where Burma did not want the citizens, and citizens are fleeing. You just spoke about Syria as well, where people are forced to flee and leave here. So in terms of us being defenders and ordinary citizens making a change, how do we do this, and how do we continue to ensure that global human rights are being preserved?
I think one of the key issues is how do we change the narrative from talking about I and me to the we. When we see ourselves as part of a community, whatever kind of pain and suffering the community goes through, we feel the same and we will do something about it. And some of this kind of solidarity you talk about doesn't necessarily have to be something major. I mean, we've heard during the COVID situation that people at a very local community level have started, backyard gardens to grow food that they can then supply to people who didn't have food to eat. And for me, that is fantastic solidarity. So we don't have to fly across the world to share that solidarity as fellow human beings. But I think we need to see ourselves as part of a community that stretches across the world, so that, if your finger is injured, your whole body feels pain. And I think we need to be looking at it in that way. And I think that as Nabeelah is saying, we need to raise awareness. We need to be aware about what's happening globally, but also nationally. Situations like China and the Uyghurs, or the conflict in Yemen, or the conflict in Libya, where, or right now in Myanmar, where the people are protesting against the military coup. And I think if we are aware of that, we become much more conscious of what's happening around the world. And of course, we can't engage with every single issue, but at least that awareness will help us understand what's going on, and in a way empathize with the people who are undergoing that kind of suffering.
Shukran, Ahmed. And Nabeelah, your concluding remarks?
I think, we need to, as a global nation, we need to stop looking at human rights as a nice to have, as like little nice chocolate sprinkles at the top of something. It's not. Human rights is not a privilege. It's not a luxury. It's something that we all deserve. And it's something that our governments and our states need to be ensuring that they are upheld at every possible level. I think also looking at youth activism as well, it's a great space to actually ensure that human rights are being upheld. And these are spaces that, we need a lot more of our other institutions to be backing and actually supporting, in order to carry out a lot of our activism work, we need certain resources, we need funding, we need networks. And a lot of the times, a lot of youth don't have access to these. So creating a network of holistic sharing, holistic development, holistic growth can actually ensure that we see sustainable and progressive growth in our country in all sectors. So for me, I really want us to start looking at human rights. It's not just something that's outside of us, but something that we should be embodying and actually carrying out in our day-to-day lives.
I love what you said. It's not, human rights are not a nice to have, and it's not that sprinkle, but actually it's a real issue, and everybody has the right to life, has the right to human dignity, has a right to freedom of movement, and has a right to their language, practice their own belief system. These are basic rights that we have by virtue of being human and inhabitants of Earth, irrespective of what geographical country or boundary you are in. And I think we should campaign for this, both, as Ahmed said, awareness both nationally and globally as well. And I'm so privileged to speak to individuals like yourself, Ahmed, I think you've gone grey by defending our human rights here, because you've started in the 70s and 80s. In terms of this, you've dedicated your career being a human rights lawyer to take it up to that level and making a difference both in international spaces and in Nabeelah yourself. I mean, you could be doing a number of other careers where it's going to be profitable, but you've also dedicated your life and committed to defending our human rights. And we're not asking for that level of commitment that these two individuals, sterling individuals, I have here. But if we start solidarity, as Ahmed had said to round up, it starts at home. As an employee, ensure that you treat your employees with the dignity they afford. Allow them the respect. Start there, because that will inform your decision, and that type of mindset and kindness and compassion will permeate throughout. So it starts there on a level that you can do yourself. Then align yourself with community organizations. Start in acts of charity, show you care, and then move from there up the stages, because it just takes an ordinary person to make an extraordinary difference in the life of somebody. So whether you choose to dedicate your lives to defending human rights, or just show kindness and compassion and allow somebody to restore their dignity by renewing somebody's dignity, whether it's somebody who's a homeless person, I'll provide something, find ways where they can have access to a shelter, or allow them to get a job so that they can start earning to restore their dignity and confidence. That alone is human rights, and you're allowing somebody to restore their dignity. So whatever capacity you can, and we can be the instruments for change. No matter how small it is, all those small ones will add up eventually, and we all can have a beautiful earth that we all can call home. Shukran, Ahmed, for your time from Doha, in Nabeelah, for giving up your public holiday, extra rest day, to discuss this issue. I appreciate your time. And once again, I'd like to acknowledge you as true humanitarians who give your life in service, selflessly give your life and time and resources in service of humanity, and show kindness and compassion. I thank you. Assalamu alaikum. May peace and blessings upon you, and may you always be under the mercy and protection of the Almighty. Thank you for joining us here on Salam Media, your online humanitarian platform.
Thank you.
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. And that is the show today, mid-morning with Mariam Mia. And until next week, may you all be under the mercy and protection of the Almighty. Peace and blessings to everyone.